Well, I am Khawar Mumtaz. I work in Shirkatgah and I'm Pakistani, and Shirkatgah is a part of the network of living under Muslim laws. The question of whether Pakistan is secular or not, it is not. It is a country who by constitution defines itself as the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And it's interesting, when Pakistan came into being 64 years ago, the mood of the parliament was to be secular. Because there were minorities, the parliament had Hindus and Christians and others. But, and the founder of the country also believed in secularism. Although it was a homeland for Muslims, it wasn't supposed to be a homeland for just Muslims. It had to take care of others who were living there. And but he died quite early, and the pressure of the religious right is very interesting. The religious puritists, I would call them, were opposed to Pakistan, the creation of it, because they felt that Islam does not need boundaries. So therefore we don't need a country just for Muslims, we should be spread all over the world. Pan-Islamism. And but once Pakistan came into being, they moved to Pakistan, and they said they were the ones who could define what a Muslim state. So they took over that role for themselves, and for many years were considered the lunatic fringe. But the process of history, evolution of politics, created more and more space for them as time went on. But this, so the constitution, the first constitution that we had, which took 9 years in making, did not say that this would be a secular state, but did not in the constitution say that it would be an Islamic state. But it did have a preamble which established principles of Islam that should be followed. So it was more an advisory preamble. But when Ziaul Haq came in as the army general who came through a coup, he amended the constitution, and those principles of policy became substantive part of the constitution. And after that, the definition of Islam was it came into the control of the religious right, which had always been seen not as serious, but over the period of time, because of our repeated military spells of 10 years each, where political process was completely stopped, they got the space to expand their influence and their connections with Saudi Arabia. I think that's very instrumental in the kind of Islam that got propagated formally. Pakistan is a Muslim country, but majority of people follow a more mild, more tolerant brand of Islam. They don't know the text so much, but they believe in tolerance, they believe in Sufi saints, they believe in poetry, they believe in devotional poetry, where at a Sufi saint's tomb they will dance, they will sing, men and women will mingle. And then we have this very Salafist way of looking at Islam, which comes with a lot of power. The Jamaat Islami, the most organized Islamic organization party, had very close link to these Muslim Brotherhood, and as well as other religious political parties had connections with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia gave them Qurans, got them over to train, the Imams went to study. So it seeped in, it's almost creeped in into society, and General Ziaul Haq, I think, is the watershed. That even when we called ourselves Islam, the polity was tolerant. I wouldn't call it completely secular, but it was tolerant. And before that, one turning point, the other turning point was when, under the pressure of the religious right, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the Prime Minister who was liberal and called himself a socialist and a leftist, declared one part of Muslims as non-Muslims. The Ahmadiyyas were declared non-Muslim, and that was a success for the right. And under their pressure, he banned alcohol. Under their pressure, he changed the weekly holiday to Friday. So the question arises, why was that pressure accepted? They were not, these elements were not so strong at that time. But they did have, they were always organized for street power. But their street powers were always in cities and towns, not in rural areas. So the rural areas remained mild, tolerant, poor, and believers, all very strong believers, but not believing in this extreme Islam. And it was Ziaul Haq and then the Afghan war. That's when our society got militarized, because it was fighting on behalf of the Americans, and the Mujahideen were actually nurtured and developed, and from all over the world they came there to fight the Russians, the communists. And that bloody war really, I think, changed the course of our country, which was, despite the Salafis, was a milder, softer, not insecure country. I remember in our homes we never had gates locked. And a lot of homes didn't have walls, you just had a hedge. And all of a sudden now if you go to Pakistan, you see tall, high walls, locked gates, armed guards, and security, systems installed, which was just not even, it wouldn't even enter on our minds that something like this would happen. And Ziaul Haq gave them, the religious parties, a place in the government, but he also changed a lot of things within the army. And army is the most strong, organized institution in Pakistan. And the army saw the politics in Afghanistan as something that they needed to support, and they supported the religious extremists because they were the Taliban, because it was the creation of Pakistan. And they were, and then the influence came back to us. And when it became difficult for them after they were thrown out of Afghanistan, the Americans, they turned inwards, because then Pakistan, the whole society has now become their target. So there are people who believe, who have liberal ideas and think secular, but it's not a secular country, and it's becoming more and more tight and religious and very narrow interpretation of Islam. In our society, for instance, in Pakistan, I don't know if you know, the Milad, that is salams to the Prophet, was a very normal religious event where you stood up, you sang praise of the Prophet, and you prayed for him. Under the Saudi influence, it's considered now shirk. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to have 3 days of prayers after somebody dies. Even that is not allowed. It's seen as shirk. It's not. You don't do this. The logic is that you can't pray for anyone's soul. The person who's gone has taken his balance sheet with him, and he was responsible for his future and the other life. You can't do anything. Why are you doing this? These are all Hindu customs. They derive from Hinduism, from the South Asian culture, and should be shunned. So it's in front of our eyes you've seen our society transform. Now there are people who, Women's Action Forum for instance, declared about 20 years ago that it stood for secularism. And there was a big debate around it. Do we need to call ourselves secular, or do we just behave the way we think is a secular way of behavior instead of labeling us, because it invites a lot of flack. But after much debate, it was agreed that the Women's Action Forum stands for secularism. And now I think more and more, at least I personally believe, that religion has to be taken out of state governance, because state, if that comes in, we've seen the entry of it has created chaos in our society. Inclusion of defining everything from the Islamic perspective, what you've done is that you've created more division in society. And you're anti-Shias, you're anti-so-and-so, and you're anti-this and that, and this school of thought. Let's keep that to the private sphere. Let's have governance and administration which is temporal. Let's keep that to temporal level. Let's have governance, administrations, people's health, their needs, their services. Let's keep religion out of it. And let religion be, if there are debates, let them be at another level. If there's practice, it has to be at an individual level. Let's not embroil day-to-day management and administration with religion. So that's position now we have to take, because what the government does is constantly invite the view of the religious. Now what happens is that because you've got it now in the constitution, religious parties say this is what the constitution says. And for the constitution to be reverted, it's impossible. We had a major exercise of constitutional revision, and this point nobody agreed on. And now the religious extremists have become very powerful. They're armed, they go around bombing everything that they want to bomb. They've attacked the military headquarters, they've tried to attack the parliament, so nothing is safe. So that is what Pakistan is like. It was never a secular state, but there was a lot of intention and a lot of people believe it should be. The army used to be neutral. It's become a Muslim Islamic army. And it is the most powerful institution in the country. No government, civilian government can survive without the armies. So a liberal, more progressive party, but the ethos is also liberal of the party, People's Party, Bhutto's party, is forced to compromise all the time and makes these unholy alliances, as we were talking about in Tunisia. It has to make up its numbers. It will align with some of the most extreme Deobandi parties. There's a whole push by the donors that you must have a dialogue with the religious parties, because you have to get them on board, because they have a strong influence. That's true, their influence has grown. They've got so many madrasas, thousands of them, where they take children, girls and boys at age 9 or 8, and they, after 10 years of schooling, they come out of a certain way of looking at the world and worldview. But they say, we should try and introduce education and, broader secular education in the madrasa, include using of internet and computers and technologies, and include literature or whatever, geography or history or something. But the essence of those madrasas is something else, and that influence is very strong. And I've had arguments with donors. They say, no, we must talk to them. The channel of communication should be open. I don't think we have much of an impact. Maybe on some small things, yes, local level, but I don't think we counter them by including them. That's my perspective. They feel that people are influenced by them because they are located within communities. So if you have a progressive man there, the influence will be better. Now they're looking in a very a narrow sense. They're saying that if you have the imam of the mosque, with you, then he could be one person who would say, yes, send girls to school. Education is good. He may be he may say that family planning, contraception is okay, please go ahead and do it. So they're looking at it in those terms. Now, I think we need to maybe see cumulatively how many will do that and what impact will it have. If we give them the space, which is not theirs actually, it would be much better to go to the people directly. Why do we need an intermediary? I mean, I don't think, and I've argued it, but they feel that, that is a strong influence, and that strong influence will, you convince those people. It's not easy to convict an extremist. I don't think so. And they say, no, call Muslim scholars and get their point of view. Yes, there are good, but the good Muslim scholars are under as much threat as anybody else. One of our progressive, liberal, very rational scholar, Javed Kamadi, had to leave the country because he was threatened. He had a regular program on TV and he was very popular. And he got a threat that, you've got 2 daughters. So he moved to Malaysia with his family. And one of his assistant was shot at. He had to close down his center and move. So, progressive religious scholars, there may be some, and they can also have an influence, because now the population is so confused what is right and what is wrong, because there is this new way of aggressive way of pushing Islam in a way that people didn't practice. So people do have questions. Now the Imam of Masjid, unless we put him through a different kind of education, is not going to overnight start believing what you're saying. He will become as threatened as anyone else. So I don't know why they do it, but I think it's their own defensiveness, their own misperceptions. Well, I mean, those against secular people are against people who are articulate and make public noises. So, the governor of Punjab, he didn't say anything about the law being bad. He just said that this law is misapplied so much that we need to look at it. And he went out in support of a woman who had been accused. She hadn't been convicted. She was just an accused. And he was therefore, everything was misconstrued, and it was said that he was against blasphemy. He is for blasphemy. You can, and very, very frightening, I think, at least in the case of Pakistan, are the TV anchors. We have now a very free media, but these TV anchors are all inclined to the right, and a lot of them from religious parties. And they twisted, and the whole thing, you could see it blowing out of proportion, and finally he was killed. Because the man who killed him was his own guard, who said that he was taking a position against Islam. Now, all his interviews have been played 10 times over. Not in a single interview can you see that. And the other accusation was that he had supported a woman who was blasphemous. Now she hadn't been only accused, there was no proof. And he was murdered in broad daylight. The minister of minorities who said that yes, we need to revisit this law, and the Prime Minister said, the Prime Minister withdrew his statements. And the Minister for Minorities, who was a Christian, was also killed within a month. And Sherry Rahman, who moved a bill, and this bill was moved 2 years ago, it was nothing that was new. All of a sudden she became a blasphemous, liable to be killed, and had to go into a shell to secure herself. So now, I don't know if you've seen, there is an interview on YouTube of a Jamaat Islami current head, and one of the TV anchors is talking to him, and he's asking him whether if a woman is raped, because rape has now been criminalized in Pakistan, so if a woman is raped, should she go and complain? And he was saying that if a woman is raped, best thing for her is to keep quiet. So he said, but why? If she's been violated and it is considered a violation of a woman, so why? So this man said, this Jamaat Islami head, he said, you're asking me questions, you're blaspheming. So this man, this was a young anchor, he said, what are you saying? Just because I ask you a question, you want me killed? And this was a frightening on public TV. So it's so easy to just label anyone as blasphemous, and more than half the cases of blasphemy are for property, implicating people. It's like honor killing. So it's and we know of people like Asma and Hina and others who speak out against these people are always under threat. They hate it. And Asma's house was attacked by these people. So many journalists are no longer able to stay in the country. Some of the leading journalists are outside, come in for a few days and go away because they are under threat, and they've all had hate mail and threat mail, death threats from them. So Pakistan's become very, very... You see, there was a time you could say anything, they would counter it, but now everything is being settled by the gun. You see, a lot of women have found space by following the religious. You see, because within the religious parties, they have all realized that you need women in politics. So they've opened up their spaces for women. So you have women in madrasa, and those women then go and teach in schools, and then they further brainwash people with a certain point of view. So they are instrumental. So you now see so many more women in dars and in schools, even in secular schools, they come in and inject a certain kind of thinking in small children. So, that thing keeps in the child's mind, and unless you have a home where you can discuss it, down this or counter it, it stays with them. So, and for women generally, it means that anyone can question what your clothes are, anyone can question what you're doing. So it's become a narrower space. Not that women don't fight against it, but in the universities it's become much more difficult for girls and boys to be together. In some of the universities where the hold of the religious right is strong, they determine which boy is going to talk to which women, who is sitting with whom, why are they sitting together, all kinds of things. And this has been happening gradually. I mean, even when I was at the university, they used to attempt this. We would defy it. Now it's become more difficult to defy because they pick up the boys and beat them into a pulp. So it's all, I mean, I think the space for women is narrowing. On the other hand, the economic pressures are pushing women out. So there's a sort of, so you have women in the media, you have lots of women. And very strong women in the electronic media, in the print media. So there's this sort of constant tension in society. And it's much more insecure. You feel it, you know. The time when you really feel, should I be going out at night or not? Should I do this or not? And it's also partly, society's become more criminalized because of poverty and others, so everything just gets combined. In the sense that a lot of the criminals are protected by them. And a lot of the political activists of the religious right are, in my view, criminals. If they can go around and shoot people and beat them up, it's criminal. So going back to the how school syllabus affect, and the syllabus in Pakistan over the years, it used to be sexist always. You know, there was always the sisters playing with dolls and the brother going around to school on a bicycle and that kind of inequality. But now it's become very religion based, and whether it's history, whether it's Islamic studies, all literature, all stories are about religious, Islamic or religious entities. And there's an aggressiveness also, the wars and jihad. Jihad has become very central in the school books. So, you're fighting for your beliefs, your faith, your ideology, jihad. Everyone should be doing jihad. So there's been a lot of studies of school books, and many recommendations have been made. And last government tried, the education minister, a woman, she tried to change the syllabus, and there was such an outrage that in the end she was removed, and that whole initiative was dead. So these days again there's a lot of talk about highlighting what the books are teaching children, teaching them to be intolerant, giving them only one point of view, pluralism is not promoted. We say we are democratic, but no pluralism in there. So, there's been a lot of talk about changing the syllabus or allowing schools to have additional syllabus, which some elite school can manage, but a government school will not. Because your teacher is not educated enough either. He's been through the same system. Now we're getting, since 1977 to now, new teachers have grown up in that system. So it's all permeating society in a very negative way. And the liberal or the educated or the intellectuals are a smaller number. And even among them, a number of women now you see who've taken on the niqab, which was uncommon. I mean, people we know, their daughters or their wives have started wearing the hijab. So the influence is very strong. I don't know what will break it, but it'll take a lot of work. I know from my going from the school thing and the environment generally. Now my daughter is a TV actress. She also dances. She also does unusual things like farming. So her children think that this is normal, but then they find none of their friends' mothers do things like that. So that creates a bit of a. And I remember when my son was in school and we were activists in Women's Action Forum. It was Ziaul Haq's time. The teacher ridiculed boys whose mothers had gone onto the streets. So my son said, I didn't say that that my mother also does that. I said, why didn't you? He said, because they were making so much fun. So you create a situation where what your mother is doing is not right, that feeling. Later on he said, I'm not sure whether I should sing. Is it okay to sing as a Muslim? He loves to sing, he's trained to sing. And he went through that because somebody was instilling in his mind that music is not part of Islam. So it's these distortions that creep in as children are growing and create confusion in their mind. Now, my children can come and talk to me and we can have a chat. Many others' household situations are not such, where maybe the parents also feel like that. One thing about what you can't do in Ramzan, and you will go to hell. And so this whole thing of hell and these pictures of what you will get if you're in hell, and if you do this you can go. This concept of sin and going to hell. And it keeps coming up, especially in the religious, in the Islamiyat class. I remember when we grew up, we had no Islamiyat class in school. Your Islamiyat, your religion was taught to you at home, not in your school or college. Now even a medical college has to have a religious course to go through and pass the exam. I feel that women, there are some women who are fighting it. At different levels, women fight on. Even the women within religious parties, recent studies have shown, including Farida's one, that they are creating spaces for them. These are little battles, but those battles create a little bit of space. Now, to be seen is that when this battle becomes a war, will it ever become a war? This is my question to Farida when she was. I said, we've had 3 or 4 studies showing that women are winning battles, household level, workplace level. When do we see this becoming a war where they come out successful for women? And I think that's the challenge. But otherwise, for instance, women in parliament, they're the ones who moved some of these bills, and successfully. And there are now women, initially when Pakistani women sat in parliament, they always covered their head, like Benazir. Now there's so many who don't. And this is it's a statement and an act of defiance. And they are some of the most active women parliamentarians. Now we have 74 women sitting in the parliament. And they, some of them are totally belong to the religious parties 1 and 2 and 3. Their quota is always smaller. But the others are, asserting women's rights. So I think that there are openings where we have to make sure that we can support those openings. Because that's the only way, and support them not on the religious ground, but as citizens, as human rights. And one of the campaigns that Shirkat Gar keeps asserting is that we are talking about equal citizenship. We want equal rights as citizens, regardless of color, class, religiosity. Why should the minority be seen as a minority and therefore excluded from a lot of things? So, we have to push for some of these concepts, make them more public, keep reiterating them to the young people, to others, because that's the only way, a penny will drop somewhere. Otherwise, if you're not even talking about it, it's the other point of view. This is a country for the Muslims, and this kind of Muslim, anybody else can go to hell. And that has to be fought. But I do feel that there is hope among women. And optimist, as an activist, I'm always an optimist also.